Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're cutting right through the noise to look at the fascinating evolution of the human mind. We're going to break down the core frameworks of psychology into really clear, high-impact takeaways.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll cover what psychology actually is, look at the historical schools of thought, dive into Freud and the unconscious mind, explore modern fields of psychology, and finish up with the classic nature versus nurture debate.
All right, part one. What is psychology? The science of behavior and mind.
So first things first, psychology isn't just mind reading, right? It's the rigorous scientific study of our behavior and mental processes. The critical mechanism we look at here is how a stimulus, so any object or event, triggers a specific reaction or response in an organism. Think about a sudden loud noise making you jump out of your seat. That simple chain of events, that is literally the bedrock of psychological study.
Now, there's a really profound divide in our human experience. On one side, we've got overt behavior. These are your observable actions, the things anyone sitting in the room with you can actually witness you doing. But on the exact opposite side, we have covert mental processes. These are those secret, internal operations, your quiet thoughts, your deeply held memories, and your private emotions. To really get a grasp on things, psychology demands that we study both.
And because we humans are endlessly complex, there's no single lens that can capture everything about us. Modern psychologists use what's called the eclectic approach. It's kind of like building a multi-lens telescope. We might weigh someone's genetics through a biological approach, then consider their learning environment with a behavioral approach, and even factor in cultural norms using a sociocultural perspective. It's all about combining these views to truly understand what makes us tick.
Moving on to part two, historical schools of thought, the architects of the mind.
Okay, so the modern study of the mind really kicked off back in 1879 with Wilhelm Wundt and Edward Titchener. They founded structuralism, basically trying to break the mind down into its basic emotional and sensory structures by scientifically examining one's own thoughts. But then, in the 1890s, William James brought us functionalism. Influenced heavily by Darwin, he wasn't interested in a static structure. He wanted to know how our mental processes function to help us survive and adapt. Jumping to the 1910s, Gestalt psychology popped up. These folks hated breaking things into tiny parts, famously arguing that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Finally, in the 1920s, John Watson and Ivan Pavlov introduced behaviorism. They tossed out unobservable thoughts entirely. Pavlov famously conditioned dogs to salivate at a bell, and Watson taught a baby, little Albert, to fear a white rat by pairing it with a really loud, scary noise. Wild stuff, right?
That brings us to section 3, Freud and the unconscious, stepping into the basement of the mind. Sigmund Freud completely changed how we view ourselves. He proposed that the mind operates in layers. Right at the top is the conscious mind, what you're aware of at this exact moment. Just below that is the preconscious, which holds stored memories and knowledge that you could easily pull up if I asked you a trivia question. But the deepest layer, the unconscious, that's where things get intense. This basement of the mind holds motives, irrational urges, and deep fears that we don't voluntarily bring to our awareness. Freud believed this hidden layer is what truly drives us. To explain how these hidden desires play out, Freud divided our personality into 3 warring factions. First, the id. It's completely unconscious and operates on the pleasure principle. Imagine the id as a demanding infant. It wants an entire chocolate cake right now, consequences be damned. Then you have the superego, your moral center, which would feel incredible guilt about eating that cake. Caught right in the middle of all this is the ego. It's mostly conscious and operates on the reality principle. It acts as the rational manager, trying to mediate between the demanding id and the guilt-tripping superego, finding a logical way to navigate the real world. And Freud didn't stop there. He mapped out how personality develops through 5 psychosexual stages, starting right from birth. He proposed that at each stage, pleasure is centered on a different part of the body. Now, if conflicts at any stage aren't resolved, a person can literally get stuck or fixated. For instance, a fixation in the oral stage might lead an adult to overeat, chain smoke, or become overly dependent. A harsh experience during the anal stage's toilet training? Well, that could create an adult who's excessively orderly and stubborn, what we still call anoretentive today. Freud argued this emotional baggage shapes our entire adult psychological profile. Let's transition to section 4, modern fields of psychology and how the mind works out in the real world. You know, people frequently mix up clinical and counseling psychologists, but the critical distinction is really about the severity of the issues. Clinical psychologists tackle severe, serious mental disorders using structured testing, and they sometimes even work alongside psychiatrists in hospitals.
Counseling psychologists, on the other hand, are there to guide you through milder life adjustments. We're talking everyday emotional problems, personal challenges, or even figuring out your ideal career path. Today, psychology's footprint extends way beyond the therapist's couch. Educational psychologists work to boost student motivation and curriculums in schools. Out in the corporate world, industrial and organizational, or IO psychologists, use their expertise to maximize workplace productivity and keep employees happy. Social psychologists study how group behavior and leadership influence our everyday decisions. And developmental psychologists track how we change from the day we're born all the way to old age. By blending these diverse fields, modern psychologists aim to understand human behavior in literally every corner of society. Which brings us to Section 5, Nature versus Nurture, the ultimate debate. This right here is the heavyweight title fight of psychology. On the nature side, we have our heredity, the biological blueprints, the 46 chromosomes inherited from our parents, packed with the DNA and genes that dictate our physical and often mental makeup. Pitted directly against that is nurture. This is the vast external world surrounding us from birth, how we are raised, our peers, our schools, and the culture we live in. Our biology absolutely casts a long, powerful shadow. Genes can be dominant, producing visible effects automatically, or they can be recessive, requiring a match from both parents to show up. We see this stark reality of our genetics in hereditary disorders. Take Huntington's disease, for example. It's a fatal, progressive breakdown of nerve cells located on a single defective gene on chromosome 4. If a parent has it, their child literally has a 50% chance of inheriting it. We also see major biological impacts in certain forms of mental impairment, where genetics directly shape a person's intellectual functioning. But wait, our environment wields incredible power over our destiny too, often deciding if those hereditary predispositions ever actually become a reality. It starts right in the womb. Maternal trauma or drug use can completely alter early development. It carries into our physical environment. Did you know extreme temperatures are actually linked to more aggressive behavior? Then there's the massive influence of our social environment, like family discord or intense peer pressure. And finally, the broader culture. Being raised in an individualistic Western society versus a collectivistic Eastern one profoundly molds our deepest attitudes and perceptions. So, how do psychologists possibly untangle this massive web? Well, to isolate genetics from the environment, they rely heavily on twin studies. Identical twins share 100% of their genetic material, since they split from a single fertilized egg. Fraternal twins, on the other hand, share only 50%, just like standard siblings. By comparing a behavioral trait across these two specific groups, researchers can start to measure exactly how much influence heredity holds over the environment. For the absolute purest data, we look to separated twin studies. This is the ultimate test, finding identical twins who were separated early in life and raised in completely different families. If these identical twins, raised miles apart by totally different people, still share unique habits, intelligence levels, or quirky personality traits, it strongly points to a genetic foundation. Yet, the differences between them highlight the undeniable power of their distinct environments. It beautifully proves that our behavior is never just one or the other. It's this complex, ongoing interaction between both. Looking back at this whole history of psychology, from Freud's dark unconscious depths to the biological blueprints locked inside ourselves, I want to leave you with a profound mystery to ponder. When you look in the mirror, are you seeing the inevitable result of your biology, or are you looking at a masterpiece painted by the world around you? The answer, as psychology continues to discover, lies somewhere wonderfully in the middle. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the foundations of the human mind.